Welcome back with us, Jessica Levinson of Loyola Law School and Dan Schnur of the University of Southern California and UC Berkeley. Okay, a lot to talk about. New Hampshire primary, some people said the New Hampshire primary was the big winner out of Iowa because that's now good because such a muddle that came out of Iowa. What are you looking for?
So I think you're looking to see if Bernie Sanders can essentially solidify a position as being a front runner. He did either very well in Iowa, coming in basically tied with Mayor Pete Buttigieg, or he actually won Iowa. Of course, he didn't get any real momentum that you want out of Iowa. He didn't get that moment where he got a big victory speech. I think also looking to see if Vice President Joe Biden's support is really cratering, if it turns out that he was a pretty weak leader. And I think if he has a poor showing in Iowa, followed by a poor showing in New Hampshire, a lot of people are going to be looking to say, who's my new favorite moderate candidate?
Dan?
Jessica's last point is the most important one, Conan. There are really two Democratic primaries being held in New Hampshire and through the spring. There is the Revolutionary Democratic Party, and there is what we'll call the Course Adjuster Democratic Party, or Democratic primary. So to me, less important than who happens to finish first or second in New Hampshire is who wins each of those sub-primaries. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are the Revolutionary Party. And whichever one of the two of them wins in New Hampshire goes into the next set of states with a real head of strength. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, maybe Amy Klobuchar, they're the centrist Course Adjuster Democratic primary. So there's not going to be one winner out of New Hampshire. There's going to be two. And so seeing who represents those two wings of the Democratic Party going forward is probably the most useful way to look at the results.
Right, but if you have Bernie Sanders doing very well in New Hampshire, and he did very well there 4 years ago, and you have a muddle, you just have, it's like a roller derby jam. You've got one person out front and everybody else. Then all of a sudden you've got a problem, it would seem to me, with the anybody but Bernie crowd, and they have to start mobilizing an alternative.
I think that's right. So Bernie Sanders tends to engender an enormous amount of energy, both from his supporters, obviously the so-called Bernie bros are very much behind him, and the statistics indicate that if he doesn't get the nomination, they're so much behind him that it's going to be hard to keep their support, get them to support another one of the candidates. He also tends to turn a lot of people off. So just anecdotally, if you talk to a lot of Democratic voters, and of course Dan is right, this primary is about who's going to win the progressive wing of the Democratic primary, who's going to win the moderate wing of the Democratic primary. There's a lot of people who have said either some version of, well, I'm in a safe state, so I'm just not going to vote if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination, or I'll vote but hold my nose. But I think that's the moment where there's a lot of people who are going to look around, a lot of likely voters, and say, who's our candidate? It could be a moment for Senator Amy Klobuchar. I'm not sure. My guess is that it's more of a moment for Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Well, let's talk about Michael Bloomberg. I mean, he looked brilliant by ignoring Iowa, and in Super Tuesday, he could actually become the alternative.
Well, and if, as the scenario develops that you were talking about a minute ago, Conan, if Sanders looks like he's really in control of the primary after the first few states, even if he's winning the Revolutionary Party primary, the course correctors, the centrists, even if it is more of a muddle with Biden and Buttigieg and Klobuchar, well, the centrist Democrats have got a closer like Henley Jansen sitting in the bullpen waiting to warm up, and that's Michael Bloomberg.
For some, though, James Carville on MSNBC says the focus should be on defeating Donald Trump, but that's not the focus of the Democratic primary.
Well, that's not the way primaries work. Both primaries are fueled by the energy of the true believers, the most progressive Democrats, the most conservative Republicans. And most of those true believers don't go to the polls saying, I'm going to put aside my long-held ideological
Even with Donald
principles.
Trump as president?
Well, after 2016, they vowed never to let that happen again. But if Biden or Buttigieg or Bloomberg were to test that, I suspect a lot of Warren or Sanders supporters might decide to stay home. And that's a real test for the Democratic nominee if he or she does come from the center of the party.
And we've talked about this before, the idea that the Democrats are running basically a regular primary, as Dan talked about. That's not really what primaries are about. But James Carville, I think, has a point. Why are you operating under the usual paradigm? Why don't you just say, America's facing an existential threat? That's something all the Democratic primary voters are going to believe and agree with, and say, this has got to be our goal. Let's unite behind X. But this is just It's new ideas, it's old ideas, but it's the same rubric that we've been operating.
If I may, real quick, that's exactly what they're saying. But the supporters of every single one of the Democratic candidates, from Sanders over here to Bloomberg in the middle, says, let's unite. Let's unite behind my candidate, because he or she's the one who can defeat Donald Trump.
Jessica Levinson of Loyola, Dan Schnur of USC, thank you very much for